Welcome, everyone, to our session. We are going to talk about entangling stories to organize digital scholarship, creating generative community engaged workflows. Thank you to the organizers of this conference for your efforts and for having us. My name is Mariam Ismail, and I am the Digital Projects Coordinator at Virginia Tech Publishing, which is housed in the university libraries. My work mainly involves digital humanities and digital scholarship, whether that's peer-reviewed or not peer-reviewed. I support faculty, staff, and students on all of their digital endeavors, whether it's an archive or a digital museum or an interactive storytelling experience. Um, I try and support the technical side and help them organize their processes early on.
And I am Jason Higgins. I am the Digital Scholarship Coordinator for Virginia Tech Publishing. This is a unique role. I am jointly affiliated with the University Libraries and the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences. My background is in oral history and history. So I teach in the history department, but I work in the libraries, and this enables me to engage in community engaged scholarship. I also provide experiential learning opportunities for students, and I get to collaborate with fantastic librarians.
So the first thing we want to talk about is entangling stories. Why is this important? What value does it bring to digital humanities projects? And I come from a journalism background, and so when I think about interviews, I think about them within a grander story. And so that's kind of the perspective I bring to my role here. And so by entangling these individual stories, these oral histories that Jason or other projects are working on, we create this interconnected narrative where we're moving beyond individual experiences to present the collective voice. Um, and this makes it particularly valuable when we're talking about these community engaged projects, where we want to highlight the individual, but also the community in its collectivity and how there's that shared experience. Um, and so by developing this workflow, I'm trying to break things down in terms of fragments. So thinking about it in terms of fragments, whether it's snippets of interviews or archival images or videos, narration, materials that families have provided. All of these can be put together to guide the storytelling process and tell richer stories.
This project was launched in March of 2022 on the 150th anniversary of Virginia Tech. The VT Council on History and the More Than a Fraction Foundation partnered to bring the descendants of people whose ancestors had been enslaved on the land that Virginia Tech now occupies. As a postdoctoral fellow at the time, I was teaching a class on oral history, and three of my students volunteered to record interviews with descendant communities who were visiting Virginia Tech and these plantations for the first time. Rather than thinking of that moment as the capstone of these efforts, I saw them as the beginning of an opportunity to sustain and to continue to build relationships with descendant communities, and how to also record interviews with family members who weren't able to travel to Virginia Tech. So I created a process for recording remote oral history interviews, and then engaging students in that process as well. I realized that in order to build a sustainable relationship with community partners, tying it to a semester-based course created a barrier. Those students who were involved in it, I hired a couple of them into the following semester, and they were able to engage in that project as paid research assistants. That not only acknowledges their labor, but it makes sure that we're not reproducing the exploitation of not paying for labor, especially on this project that involves the topic of slavery and its legacies. The following year, I partnered with the Campus EXP internship program. This is a program at Virginia Tech that allows me to recruit students from all across different departments and colleges. We also pay these interns $15 an hour. And in turn, they gain experiential learning opportunities. They learn how to carry out oral histories, communicating with partners. They learn technical skills and video and audio editing. And they also get a chance to gain unique perspectives through this type of work. So, this project has been ongoing for 3 years. This means that there was a lot of education involved. There were a lot of opportunities to learn, to improve, to adapt, and to create replicable workflows and processes. That way, a student who worked on this project in 2023 and a student who worked on it in 2024 would be engaging in the same similar processes, and the final products would look similarly. Shared authority is essential to the work of oral historians. This means that our project partners are part of what's created from the very beginning, from developing interview questions and identifying what the goals of a project are, to applying to grants and making sure that they're acknowledged and paid for their efforts along the way if possible. Informed consent ensures that people who participate in this project do so willingly. They understand that they have a right to refuse to answer any questions. They have a right to review the oral histories and make any necessary changes before they're archived. In this particular project, we insist that anyone who is able to make use of these oral histories has to have permission from the participants themselves. This ensures that their stories are not being used in ways that are exploitative. And just a couple of images. These were highlights in this project for me. Nia Solway was in the African American history class, and then she was paid as a research assistant for nearly a year and a half. And this is Kira Mosley Hobbs, my project partner, and we were in Minneapolis recording oral histories. And in the background is one of the participants, Mickey Johnson, rocking out on the bass. And then Janae Neely has been working this year on this project, and she presented her work at the Contested Spaces Symposium, which was organized by Kira Mosley Hobbs. Um, in conclusion of my portion of this, it's really important, I think, to partner with librarians, especially people who can create new generative workflows, because we have to start thinking of the creation of digital humanities exhibits not as just a way to showcase the oral history and the content that's been collected through the research process, but also to acknowledge the generative process behind creating digital humanities projects, which is why bringing in someone like Mariam into a project like this is really essential to its success.
Thank you, Jason. This is how I've conceptualized this next stage of things to kind of get it into this interconnected format. And so the phases I identified were firstly creating a guide and a workflow. So thinking about the project in its totality before breaking it down. So this workflow document is a comprehensive document that outlines all of the steps. It links to all of the spreadsheets and other materials that we're using. It includes appendices, where each field in every spreadsheet is described, and also some ways to standardize what is in that field. And then finally, some resources for places to gather materials, whether that's music or videos or archival materials. And I do want to share this document very briefly. In this document, there's the planning phase, so choosing themes and creating that organizational structure for how you're going to preserve things into folders. So this organization again, the gathering phase, which is gathering all of the content, and we'll get into that more with the next series of spreadsheets. And then these are the resources, so places where you can get images, audio, the video, thinking about public domain and Creative Commons content, and then finally the assembly. And what are all of these different elements that you can put into a final product. So here, what we're thinking is documentaries that would live on Digital Humanities website. And this guide and workflow, it's been shared and is being used with 3 or 4 community projects that I'm on. And so it's interesting to see the ways that it has been developed to suit the needs of every project. Um, but once whoever's working on the project gets this overall process, this view from above, we kind of break it down again. And so the first thing is to identify themes. So the recurrent ideas or concepts that keep coming up within these interviews. And then we collect snippets. So small parts of each interview that one make it more accessible in case we wanted to have a standalone so that people don't have to listen to a whole hour interview, or assemble it into this greater documentary format. And then finally, gathering materials. So finding additional materials that would add context, it would add visual interest. We could add interactive elements. So we've been adding interactive timelines, or if there's a geographical element, we would add interactive maps. This is the themes document. So this is where we start. And so we name a theme, we try and give it a short name, and then we provide a description so that it's clear what would go under this theme. And then we go into this spreadsheet where we identify the snippets and we put them in an organized manner. And so we have the speaker name, who's speaking, the captions, which are the closed captions or the transcript, the timestamps and the duration. So knowing where to find it within the interview and how long it is. Because when you're creating documentaries, usually you want the snippets to be a bit shorter, so like 3 minutes, and then a link to where they are on YouTube and any accompanying media. So if there's B-roll, if there's archival footage that will run on top. And then, of course, the lower third's text. So how do they want to be identified within this project? And all of the themes that we identified, they're at the very bottom of the page. And this is where we think about those naming conventions early on so that there is a consistent way that things are named that provide the most information. The caption, so any credits that need to be added, and then the alt text. So this is a way to bring in preservation, organization, and accessibility into the process early on, as opposed to going back and doing it retroactively. And then finally, the assembly spreadsheet. So having all of those elements broken up in various places and then bringing them together into this one place where for one theme, maybe for the land, we would have scene one have a title slide or a video interview or an image and kind of play with all of these elements, put them together, see how they correspond to each other. And all of these spreadsheets and this workflow is created to make it easy for people to jump in, jump out, to see what has been done so far. Um, and so as students come and go, or more elements, more interviews are added, we can easily incorporate them within this process. And so the last thing I want to say is thinking about the final product, the digital museum, and thinking about how these stories can be shared in the most ethical and productive way possible. Thinking about how the methodology of this entire process can be shared, how it can be used for other families who are trying to conduct different projects, and just making sure that everyone who has participated in the project feels pride and they feel proud and they want to share that website. They like how they're presented. Um, and so that kind of brings in that ethical component that Jason highlighted early on.
And I'll just reiterate one point, which is that as library publishers produce digital humanities content, it's really important to think of librarians, students, community partners, and digital scholars as co-producers of new historical knowledge or new types of knowledge created through the process because these processes and workflows that Mariam has presented today generate new understandings of knowledge and processes. So thank you, Mariam, for partnering with me on this project.
Thank you, Jason, for having me. And thank you all for listening to our session. We look forward to hearing your questions, um, and partner with your library.